Well, hello YouTube, this is Greg. Thanks for stopping by. Today I wanted to chat for a bit about my benchtop therapy. It occurs to me, though I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, that one of the things that I do for therapeutic value is piddling around in my shop, dressing blades of edge tools and making new hickory handles for them and putting all those pieces together. So let me turn this around and I'll see if I can catch you up. Hang on. When I was a little guy, the first knife that I ever got was given to me by my grandfather, and the next year he gifted me this little Norlund hatchet, followed on the heels by this Hudson Bay Norlund boy's axe. Over the years I inherited his double bit cruiser and his little double bit Norlund hatchet, and since we had a dealer in Pensacola where I grew up, occasionally when I'd see a boy's axe at Reynolds Hardware that was different from any of the ones I had, if I had some money I'd get it. And the polite fiction is that Gregory doesn't collect axes, but over the 50 years since I first got these two, I probably have a dozen or so, and another half a dozen sitting in vinegar baths waiting for something to happen to them. So recently I came into these two, a little boy's axe head and this crusty one, and a friend of mine in Europe sent me a note and asked me if it might be possible to do a start to finish video on a restoration project. And so this crusty one that's in the foreground here is a recent acquisition. It had been abused by its original owner. It's fairly badly mushroomed. It's not too pitted, but there's rust all over it, and the blade seems to be the right geometry for the original size. It has some very light scalloping, and so this looks like it'll be a good one for a restoration project. I have some decisions to make. Usually if they're in good shape, I will dress them in a vinegar bath first to remove the rust, and then decide how much of a wire wheel. If you've seen my older axes, I have never polished them. If they're kind of grungy and black looking from years of being in rem oil and have patina on them, then I'm happy with that. So I think what I'm going to do first with this one is put it on a wheel and remove the mushrooming, and then I'll decide where I'm going to go with that. So let me set this down and I'll figure out my grinding wheel and we'll get going. Okay, for my tools this afternoon, I'm going to use this old Ryobi 8-inch bench grinder with a coarse and fine wheel. I have another, I think it's a Century, or it may be an old Rockwell, that has an 8-inch wet well and a 6-inch buffing wheel. And then I have another 1-inch Ryobi 1-inch by 30-inch belt sander. And I use some combination of the three of these in a bastard file to dress blades. This is noisy and not much fun to look at, so having mentioned the tools, I'm going to go ahead and get the mushrooming off this thing pretty close, and then I may dress the rest of it with a little bastard file. So I'll bring it back when it's a little more cleaned up than it is. Hang on. Well, hello YouTube. Thanks for joining me. It's been a couple of days since I started to work on that little rusty Norlund head. I put it on the wheel and managed to get all of the mushrooming off, preserve the maker's mark, got it mostly back in the original shape that it was in, soaked it in a vinegar bath to get most of the rust off, and put a little wire brush on it, and now we're ready to fit a handle for it. So let me turn around and I'll show you the tools we're going to use to get the handle on, and then we'll go through that with maybe this one and have another little boy's axe head that's been in a vinegar bath for a while. This one also doesn't fit the profile of most of the Norland literature. The head of it is 1 3/4 pounds, so it's not the 1.5 pounds. This looks probably most similar to their camper axe, but the weight of it's less and the size of it is a little less than my camper axe, so who knows what this thing is. Let me get us turned around and we'll get started on handling the axe. Okay, here we go. These are 3 blanks I pulled out of a piece of Tennessee hickory and roughed them out. I will usually make a template with a pencil of the eye of the axe. Templated on the top. These have been mostly sanded. Rough this one into an octagon shape. This one will be the head for this little boy's axe. And it's going to need a little help to begin its journey. This one is the one that I've roughed for the little felling axe. This one, usually what I do is start with the basic axe handle and then scallop it. So the octagons, unless I start really big and thick, or usually feel really thin in your hand. But these heads are a little lighter than their analogs in my collection, so thinner and lighter is going to be okay. For the tools that I'm going to be using today, I have 2 sanding blocks that I've made. I just clipped off the spring on this one. Let's see if I can get it back. I have to take off the screw. Anyway, they're held with springs and bars, and then I cut the sandpaper, roll it over the edge of it, and away we go. For most of the work today, I'll be using this one that I have shaped to be about this right diameter to fit in the hook here where the head goes on. This is my Milwaukee saw that I use for cutting the slot. Already started that. We'll see if we need that anymore. And then I have a couple of deadfall hammers that I use to start the heads on and take them off. So for starters, head on, give it a little tap. Handle. Just see where we are with it. Looks like there's a good start. Enough room around for the wedge to push it out. To get a little closer, I'll score a line on it. And with the smaller one while we're at it. To go. The pencil marks then show me where to sand so that I don't really need to sand anyplace else. do this a couple of ways. We can put it in the vise, or I can do it by hand. Let's see, which one is which? Start with the bigger one. What I like about using this method is that you can see exactly what you've taken off, and as soon as the pencil line is gone, you're done. You can also see on the handle end here, the pole end, that there's some places that were abraded as it went in, and so I'll touch on those just a little bit. My anxiety is that I would sand more than I need to and take off too much stock. Occasionally, depending on my mood, I will start with a rougher blank than this, and I won't mind at all if I am putting it in the vise. But since I've roughed out this octagon already, I really don't want to put some heavy vise clamp marks on it, because I'm getting it ready to go. Sometimes I get really lucky with what I like about ash and hickory is that you can read the grains pretty well. When I template the eye opening, a mark from the CNC machine and lathe, you can see the grain, and especially if the grain is going this way, you'll know you have to take off a little more to get it to go in. This grain is not completely parallel with the axis of the axe. So I'll just sand a little bit. And then we'll try it again. Pretty good. It's getting closer. It has a good tight fit. There's no space showing on this side. Plenty of room to push out and with a wedge on the top. So I'm going to give it another stroke or two with a sanding block. See how we do. I'm out. There we go. Took me a couple of times to get the sanding block where it was about the right radius to fit up into the shoulder. This may be just about the right size. Sometimes you get luckier when you're rough shaping it. I've had a couple of my more recent axes where it took 15 or 20 of these little cycles to get the axe handle in the ballpark of where I wanted it to be. This one may go pretty quick. Same kind of deal, just a spring-loaded clamp, and this is 60 grit. And this is looking pretty good. There's no space showing on the shoulder. Has some expansion room on at the top. Have a look at it on the edge. Looks mostly parallel to the handle. Looks like we're in good shape. The next part then will be to fit the wedge. So, I've seen people before that use glue. Not really a great one for glue. Let's see. I like this one. Some boiled linseed oil. Soak it on the wedge. Get it off. And let's see. For this, turn this around, we'll put it in the vase. Boiled linseed oil does a couple of things. It will help expand the wood as it dries and lubricate it as it goes in. In the past, I've used hardwood blocks to get these things in. Mostly in the modern age, take a file, my old bastard file, we have a head that is nicely spread out. Hit pay dirt with it just to make sure. Next part is I'm going to get a jigsaw or take this to my bandsaw and cut off this about 1/8 of an inch. There's a scribe mark. Roughly scribe it. And usually these will come off so cleanly that I do not use a metal pin in it. So just get you off here and I'll go do my jigsaw thing. I'll be right back. Okay, new tool. Let's see if I can slide around here and get this. And so what we have is a nice wedge. The head is on a nice angle. There we go. No need for a wedge. I usually leave, well, this is a little much, but it's not bad for me. Usually leave about 1/8 of an inch. This one is more like 3/16. This one's going to do for me. Sand it a little just to make it smooth. This is stuff from the surfboard factory. It's 80 grit finishing screen used on the surfboard blanks, and it will take the little rough edges off the perimeter of it. If you noticed, when I was fitting the handle, there was a lot of space around the top. And the wedge, I used to like to have it be really close, but I found that if the wedge seats well and is a little longer, then the wedge will fill up all the way to the outside edge and deal with all of that and make a nice mushroom on top of the wood. And the next part is probably just the most fun part for me. Is just its first coats of boiled linseed oil. Let's see. And let's see if I can get this up here. Turn it around. Okay. I used to use gloves, now I don't. It just feels good in your hand. You can feel it kind of soaking up. Doesn't hurt my feelings if I get it on the head. I'll clean it up after I get a couple of coats of boiled linseed oil on it. And I'll just let it sit here and absorb and soak. Wipe it down, put another couple of coats on it. This is going to be nice. It's a little large for an axe. It's the kind of thing that I would put on a 30-inch handle. But I have another Norlund head like this with a little deeper, more pronounced scallops, and weighs about 8 ounces more. So this one is going to be, I don't know how to say it, this one is going to be rather like a boy's axe version of my other larger felling axe. Okay. So set this one aside. And have a look at the other one. Here we are. You can see the pencil line is much further up the end of it. I'm probably going to need to remove stock here and here for it to go on. Looks pretty tight. More space in the head. Okay. There's nothing really skillful or elegant about this process. It just takes time. Similarly, when I'm doing fret jobs, or especially if I'm adjusting the bridge height on the saddle of an acoustic guitar or fitting the nut, I'll use a Sharpie or a magic marker and then use 400 or 600 grit just to sand on it until the Sharpie marker is just gone, and then I'll try put the strings back on, set it all up, see how it feels. I'm not sure how to say it, it's stupid. It's intuitive. You can always take a little more off. It's just really tough to put it back. So if it takes me a dozen cycles of doing this before the fit is perfect, then that's not a big deal to me. As I've shared before, as pathetic as it sounds, this is nearly therapeutic for me to be able to piddle in my shop and do this kind of thing. See, it's not quite out. Seated a little further down than it was. So once again, we'll get the pencil, we'll score it, scrub it with the pencil, use the rubber mallet to knock it off. Sorry. Bit of a different process, I suppose, for a double bit, and you really need to, for them, I will rough the handle and leave it like this, because I'm going to have it in a vise to be knocking it out, and I'll usually employ a hardwood center punch to knock it out of the head, because beating on the head will just rock it back and forth and take a long time and never get it out. So double bits are a little more finicky. They certainly require a vise, but for the most part, if you don't have a vise and you don't have anything but a piece of sandpaper, you can still use your hand and a piece of sandpaper to do this, and use the pencil technique to get you into the ballpark. You don't really need to have any special tools. In my guitar shop, one of the therapeutic aspects is making the jigs for the different, especially the acoustic guitars that I build in the art shop. It may be a measure of my laziness that I make tools to accomplish a fairly minuscule task. I could easily do this by hand, but just the radius of this sanding block that I made fits so perfectly, the handles that I make, that it makes short work of getting the curve right to seat the axe heads properly. Somewhere in my life, I probably even have a technical drawing for this thing if anybody's interested in making one. I need to take a little off. This is a little hand plane that I found in Japan that uses a razor blade, and they stay sharp a long time. I use it in the surfboard factory, especially in the shaping room. And you can see it just takes off tiny, tiny, tiny little shavings. And again, you can always take a little more off. It's just tough to put it back. Okay. So we're getting close. We're nowhere near close enough to the shoulder, but we are getting, it's almost at the top. So if I had to predict, I would guess 8 or 10 more of these cycles of knocking it off, sanding it, trying the shape of it. And again, the thing that I like about the method is that it's almost idiot proof. And that it's so easy just to take a little bit more off. You can see the places where it's been rubbing. You can see the pushback of the wood from the head of the axe as we get closer and closer. For someone who has never put a head on an axe, when I was teaching my nephew and my nieces to do this for the first time, I called this the pencil method. The pencil method worked really well, so that on their first rehang of their little Norlund axes from my collection, they got it so close that there wasn't the sense of, oh, well, this is my first one, the next one will be better. Their first ones were nearly perfect. And they're nearly perfect because in stages, again, you can always take off a little bit more. It's just tough to put it back. Here we go again. Finally have the top sticking out. It's nowhere near as deep as I want, and you can see on the side where I've cut the slot in it, it's going to go, my target depth is about 1/4 of an inch below that. You can see we're getting into a nice fit where there's no space showing. Each time we push it, there's wood being pushed back. Have plenty of space on the top. We're actually going to need to take off a good bit in order for the wedge to pull out, push out, and fill as much of that as I want it to fill. A good time too, I suppose, to read the grain. You can see on here the grain's falling away, so there is some stock that needs to come off. This is a little on an angle. The grain here still is falling away, so we're going to need to remove some stock here. Also examining the top will give you some indication of just how much stock is going to have to be taken off, so that each time I sand, I try not to be exerting too much pressure on this part with a sanding block. I really just want to take this off because this part here already fits. Tennessee hickory has some great properties in terms of just its raw strength for edge tools. But also one of the attractive qualities from me is that the grain is so easily read, it's nearly idiot-proof. Swamp ash from down here in Florida has good grain, good density. Seems to be a little heavier. In the absence of good hickory, I'm happy to go with swamp ash. But in truth, my lumber yard down here in North Florida always has good hickory. So I don't foresee a time, and right now I have enough hickory probably to last me, I don't know, a lifetime at the rate I put heads on axes. This winter, and you can nearly tell by looking at some of the video updates of my Norlund collection, this winter was kind of long and rainy and cold, and his kernelness is a delicate flower. I don't like going out when it's cold, except for long distance hiking. You know, sometimes it's just an experience to have all the weather. But I stayed in a lot this winter, partially being rolled over with Lyme disease and getting over that. But I spent most of the winter taking my favorite Norlund hatchets and axes and making new handles for them and hanging them again. I think that's when I realized there was nearly a therapeutic quality of hanging one. Okay, we're getting a little closer. A couple of more shots. So I know where we're going now. It's right at the top. Starting to be some extra space around the edge that my wedge will fill up. We're going to have to remove some from up here because I really need some room. I want the top of this to mushroom out at least. My target goal would be a 5-degree angle off of 90. So we have some work still to do. This is awesome. Here's a good thing to read. See all this wood being pushed up here? This means we have quite a bit of stock to take off from this geometry. Some more here. closer. Again, it's another reed. You can see the line tilts down on one side, which shows that I've been asymmetrically removing stock. So we'll use this opportunity to correct that. More. Close. Starting to have a little more space around the edge to make room for the wedge. If you look carefully, you can see I still have a slot. I like to go about another 1/4 of an inch before I even think about seating it on this shoulder. Pencil line. You can see it. Okay, this is looking good. Another 1/8 of an inch. I need some more space up here to get that wedge in where I want it. So this may take a couple of more iterations just to remove enough stock here so I have enough space for that wedge to push it out in a way that I like. Looking at the back, there's wood pushing up all around the entire perimeter of the head. So we're starting to look pretty good. Grain is looking like it's straight all the way back to the hilt. Oh, a little more stock needs to be removed from that. Wow, this may be it. And we're looking good. A firm seat all along the bottom. Have a nice parallel seating for it. You can never have too much linseed oil on your hands. So maybe you can have too much on your handle. Okay, nice. So we have a nice fill. There's a tiny little spot right up here at the top, but I can see that the head of the axe handle is mushrooming out nicely. Again. Sometimes in the guitar shop I like to use old world tools, and sometimes I like to use old Black & Decker. So this will serve me well. Have a nice mushroom. And the 800 finishing screen to knock the little burrs off the edge of the pole. And I suppose this is a measure of a Type C personality. I would normally be happy just to rub this with linseed oil, but I'm going to go ahead and light sand off my hammer marks. Crisp up these little bevels. And then back to my favorite part. Nice mushrooming. I'll come back with a razor knife and trim some of this part here off. These will probably get 5 or 6 coats of VLO. Let's see if I can get a good picture of that. I'm happy with the wedge. It looks like when you're doing these things that there's so much space before you do the final seating that you've taken too much off, but the wedge protruding out both sides, I count on that to seat it and help it mushroom. Get it. I really like 4 or 5 degrees of it sitting out, and with that in mind, I have almost never had to put a metal wedge. Okay. Thanks for stopping by. After I get the final coats on, I'll come back with clean hands and show you what they look like, and maybe we'll make a sheath for it. Thanks for stopping by.